it's Laura Viers.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. From what I read, it's safe to say you're calling this a concept album, right?
Yeah. I was trying to grapple with some of the issues that we're all coping with in the U.S. It's just such a fraught time in the country and so many conflicts, such a divided country and a lot of fear. And so I, wanted to tackle some of that in my songwriting, as many artists are doing. I think it's like the pressure's on for us to talk about it. I think if you just write an album like fluffy love songs, it's not necessarily going to come off that well in this climate because it's a serious time. So I tried to grapple with some of those issues and just basically my reckoning with the fragility of life and being, midlife, hopefully, sort of questioning what my point is on the planet and just trying to branch out a little bit and explore different formats of being creative and just trying to, and do something meaningful and also continue to be able to make a living, which is what I've been doing for 20 years as a musician. But, it just all feels kind of fragile right now. So I would say that the concept of the album is the fragility of precious things, or like a meditation on the precariousness of existence.
Yeah, nothing too heavy right there at all. Not at all.
I hope the music's not too heavy. I mean, that's the fine line, right? Like, as an artist, I always try to leave room in my lyrics for other people to put themselves into the story, and so leave it open enough so there's room for interpretation, but also not be so vague and out there that no one has any idea what I'm talking about. So I try to strike that balance and also I try to write for myself because it's like a salve for me, and it's like my therapy to be working through my issues through music. But I also hope that my music will resonate with other people and make them feel less alone. Like people, especially who are my good, close fans who really listen to the lyrics closely. I hope that will allow them to feel like, yeah, okay, she gets this. Like, I feel that way too. I don't feel so alone now. And that's one of the gifts of art, I think.
I've talked to a lot of artists who, you're talking about walking that fine line, and to the ones who are aware of that, it's like what you turn on the TV and it's that constant cycle, and every day it used to just even be one thing coming at us, and now it feels like five things every day.
Mm-hmm.
And to sort of have to filter that into something poetic, like what did you're talking about this a little bit already, but how challenging was that aspect of it?
I mean, I find songwriting to be incredibly challenging. To do it well, it's like out of my control, kind of. I think that's why I like it. Like, I'm kind of a control freak, a little bit type A, and so I have a really good, strong work ethic and a drive to work. But when you're working with music or anything creative, you really have to let go of that side of yourself and allow things to move through. And so I think the strength I have is that I can work day after day after day, week after week after week, and delay gratification of sharing my music with anyone. And so that's good. But the downside is I can just get into this efficiency mode. Like, I'm just going to write today. I have to write a song today. And a lot of times good songs won't come from that kind of attitude. Mm. You need to relax a little bit and be more free associative and more childlike and almost naive and just let things happen. And it's the opposite of the military sergeant who's like, okay, do work and do it from here to here and go from A to B. It's not like that at all with music. And I think that's why it continues to be appealing to me, because it forces me out of that regimented, disciplined realm that, serves my music in regard to getting music written, but it doesn't serve getting good songs written.
With all the things that you've been doing then, and not just with your extra projects, but you had the collaborative record with Nico and Katie on the last time, writing every single day in some way. Was there a point where you knew it was time then for another album? Because the last actual solo record was technically 2013?
Yes, so 5 years since my last one. I did write a lot. I wrote, I had songwriting credit on all of the songs on the Case-Lang Veirs thing. I was sort of like the workhorse in terms of just providing lots of songs, and then they would come in and tweak them really. in certain cases take all the lyrics out, all but like two, and add in new ones, but keep the melody, stuff like that. So kind of like I provided a framework for them to work with it. And in one or two cases, they came with the songs, which was also cool. Mm-hmm. But I did write like hundreds of songs for that and then for my new record. And I think for my new one, I was just like, okay, the collaborative thing was really cool. And I learned so much, and I was so grateful to be involved with that. But I also felt relieved to just be on my own again and, not having someone rip out all the lyrics and put in their own lyrics, So there was this sense of relief, like, okay, this is my thing again. And, I might do another co-writing thing with someone at some point, because I did learn so much. And I think it's just great to stretch my wings as an artist at this stage, 20 years in, and collaborate that way. But in this case, I was like, okay, I did the collaboration. I'm ready to write myself. And I just wrote for like maybe 6 months, 4 days a week, because I only work 4 days a week, sometimes 3 songs a day, just like 3 versions of a song. It's not 3 unique songs, but I've gotten quick at realizing like, oh, these are great lyrics, but man, that first take just doesn't have interesting chords or melodies. So I'm going to switch out the music, but keep the lyrics in 3 different versions. And then I would share them in batches with my husband, who's also my producer. And we would listen through, and, honestly, after 6 months, I was like, cool, I've written like 50 songs and like 10 of them are cool. And he was like, keep writing. I was like, really? Okay. And then I like wrote 20 more, and like, he's like, keep writing. I write like 30 more. It's like, keep writing.
Wow.
Because he knows, like, okay, you could say like, well, how does he know? But I think he knows what we've been working together for almost 20 years. And I think he knows that he's seen me kind of just over the years, just write a bunch of songs and just be done with it. And I think he's like, I want to see what else. I want to see you work longer and harder to see what else you can come up with, because I feel like, and he was right. As annoying as it was to hear that, he was right. Like as the further I got into it, after about a year, I really started getting some of the good ones. And I don't know why that is, but like, I think if you're just in the routine of writing, that's just what you do. You write. Good stuff is going to come out. So, and then I stopped. Once I was like, we're booking recording time, and we booked the time, and I kept writing up until that day. And then we made the record, and I stopped. I was just
and
like,
then you
God, I just exhausted myself. Yeah, I just was so exhausted from it, psychically. And then that's why I wanted to start the podcast, which we could talk about or not. But
yeah, we'll get to that.
Like, I need a break. I need a break from writing. I just need a break. I can't stand this. I don't want to ever write another song. Now that I've been doing the podcast for 6 months, or almost, about maybe 8, I'm like, I can't wait to write songs again, So for me, it just goes back and forth.
Well, first off, with all of that, I'll say that between you and Tucker, I think the 2 of you control like at least a quarter of our playlist in some way.
Now we feel like masterful and powerful over here in our little Portland house.
Isn't that interesting, though?
Great.
There you are, all the way in the corner of a country, and you probably have your little world and your little ecosystem and all of this. There is something powerful about what the 2 of you all do within your community, musical community, that stretches out across the country and just affects everything.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I don't think we think that, but I'm glad you do.
Those ripple effects are stronger than I think that you see. We're always so impressed.
I think that's true, yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And, like, I know you're in Louisville, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just love My Morning Jacket and that whole community that you guys have there. It's just a wonderful group of people, and Tucker feels so grateful to have worked with them, and Jim has sung on so many of my albums, and they're just such sweet people.
Now, I was going to ask about that. How many or who of the Jacket fellas are on the record? Because I knew Jim. I didn't know if any of the other ones chimed in this time.
They didn't make it on this one. We kind of used my old basic crew of friends that have been on the record since the early days, for the most part. Eben Kang, who plays viola on all my records, and then Carl Blau makes an appearance, as well as Steve Moore, who's out on tour with First Aid Kit now and on keys, and then this newer person in our crew named Eli Moore, who's a wonderful guitarist and bass player, and Tucker played drums. So it's mostly our kind of old crew, but Jim made an appearance on a couple tracks, Jim James, and then the other guys played on my last record. Carl and Bo played on last solo record, Warp and Left. So yeah, it was fun it's just always fun to see them and pass through Louisville and get to hang out and hear the accent, the special accent that I love.
While we're on the subject of guests, the second thing that's about to come out is Watch Fire, and that's got Sufjan on it, right?
Yes, and he is an old friend as well. I opened up for him on a tour in 2006, so about 12 years ago now, and he's never sung on an album of mine. We never asked him to, but when I wrote that song, I kind of heard his voice as that part that he sings, the backing part. And I was so glad he wanted to do it because it does sound good. It sounds like a natural placement for his voice, like in his range and his tone. And yeah, it was cool to have his voice on a record of mine. I sang on his last record, so it was kind of nice to share that. Oh, he's just a good friend too, in terms of like sometimes I'll just have a freak out, like I don't know what I'm doing. I just really, some sort of like artistic freak out, and I can call him and he'll talk me down from a ledge. It's just kind of like, it's nice to have artist friends who you just talk to once every couple of years about some kind of crisis in writing or in just, sometimes you hit a block or just a business question too. Like he's been a mentor for me in terms of really running his own business, in terms of his own label, which I also do. And, a manager who's a friend kind of thing, not like a big management company, just keeping kind of things like at the mom and pop level. And he's been a great help with that kind of thing. So I just wanted to give him a shout out for that. He's just a nice person also in terms of being an advisor on artistic and business things, as well as like a collaborator in the studio.
Well, I'll use that here as the seg we keep knocking on. And sometimes you reach out to people to talk about parenting. And that's the other huge thing that you've been doing is this new podcast. And you say you're 6 months into it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I started it because I was feeling a little bit lonely. Like, I'm a mother. My kids are young. They're only 4 and 7. And how do I do this? It's like, how do I decide? What am I going to do? How should I go out on tour? Like, how much should I go? And like, what does that mean? And the cost, are the kids going to be okay? And, or should I go out a lot more or less? There's a lot of questions that come up for people when they're trying to balance being away. You kind of have to choose. You're going to be with your kids or you're going to not be with them out on the road. Although some people I've talked to actually have brought their children through extended periods, not just the baby phase, but through school age. And I just wanted to talk to people, some of them, my elders, like, what did you do back in the day? And some of them currently just struggling in the same way that I am to balance this. And so it's called Midnight Lightning. It's a podcast that's available on iTunes and also my website, midnightlightning.net. And it's one season. It's 14 interviews with musician moms, and we talk about this kind of these juggling acts that we all have to go through to try to pull off being a good mom and a good artist.
I was thinking about sort of the bigger picture, widening out about why you do that and why I do this, and all these things. And a lot of times it's to answer our own questions. I do interviews because I'm a music nerd and a fanatic, but inevitably I'm trying to answer my own questions.
That's exactly right. That's why I started it.
And what I find out, and I wonder if you find out the same thing, is no one ultimately has the answers, that even as we look to these folks who've been doing it forever, they're still trying to find their own way as well.
That's exactly right as well. And, and that's the takeaway I have, because now I've done all the interviews. They're rolling out once a week, every Wednesday, and I think we'll be done in April with the first season. I don't know if I'll continue because honestly it's a ton of work and I'm trying to, juggle it with my music career and being a mom. But there's a million different ways of doing it. There's a million different ways of parenting. There's a million different ways of being a musician. And then there's even more ways of being both. So each person cuts their own path. And you can take advice from people and you can grab this or that, but ultimately it's going to be your own gut and your own compass, your own moral compass that guides you.
Now, for you personally, has there been any spectacular revelations that you've been able to pull from it?
First of all, the main one is you're not alone. Even though you might feel like you're alone, I am not alone in this. And in fact, when I mentioned this project to a manager friend of mine, he's like, there's only 3 of you, right? And I was like, no, actually there's 100 on my list, and that's just my list of people that I'd like to speak to on this topic. And so that's been nice to be like, oh, you feel alone when you're writing in your studio or struggling with your children in the morning, trying to get them out to, get the breakfast on the table and get them out to school and rush up to the studio, write, and get back to the people, emails, interviews, it just feels isolated and I'm on my own. But when I talk to people, I realize like hundreds of people are doing this, hundreds of women. In this season, we're focusing on women, but I might do another season of dads. It's just, like I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue, but I am curious about the dad perspective as well. And that's my takeaway is like, I can feel isolated and alone, but when I listen to them back, I realize like we're in this together and we have a lot of the same issues. And some of them are very unique. Some of our issues are unique to us, but it has genuinely made me feel like it's expanded my community in that. And the feedback that I've gotten from other people who are listening is similar, which feels great.
Does that play at all into the first single on the record, with especially that title, Everybody Needs You? Because I know that can be taken a few different ways.
Yeah, I wanted to leave that open again. It could be taken as we are all needed right now because we all matter. Like our lives, every one of us is important. That's one message of the song. And then another message could be the struggling parent who feels pulled in a million directions. And everybody, including the muse, needs you. The children need you. Your job needs you. Your muse needs you. Everybody needs you. Whose needs are you going to fulfill today? And can you fulfill them all?
It has this instantly classic sound to it and amazing mood. Like I was able to connect with those lyrics really quickly. But there's something about what you guys did sonically on that song that's sort of next level. And I don't know if that's, goes back to the beginning of the interview too about keep writing, but it's incredible.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that one went through a lot of different versions. Again, like me writing many versions of that before we found the one to stick with. And that beat is cool. The program beat that Tucker came up with, that was spontaneous in the studio, and it really cements the song in a cool way. And the bass line, I love the way that the bass line comes in this like really funky way, unpredictable way.
That's a really unique song. I also want to hit it. There's a book you've released or are releasing?
Yeah, there's a book out. It's my first picture book, children's book. It's about Elizabeth Cotten, the great folk musician who not everyone knows about, and I wanted to share her story more widely. And it was illustrated by a great artist in New York named Tatiana Fazlalizadeh, and she's a great activist artist, so I was really grateful that she was the one that my publisher picked for the illustrator, because when you're writing a children's book, you don't get to choose who your illustrator is going to be. So it could just look like not your style at all,
right,
when it's all said and done. But I love her style, and I feel so proud of the book. And I'm so glad that it turned out as well as it did. And so that's out in the stores across the U.S. and Canada and the UK now. That's
what I mean. I mean, we can only touch on all of these things, but you could do so much more talking on every one of these things.
Yeah, I mean, that was a coincidence, the album and the book coming out together. But then when I saw that, I was like, oh, maybe I should launch my podcast then too, and just like triple hit,
It's so impressive what you're doing. I've cut two of the podcasts right now, the two most recent ones.
Oh, good.
And that's been so fun to listen to. I definitely want to check out the book. I'm sure I can find it around here. But this record, I've loved your albums so much through the years, and we definitely love them here in Louisville. But I really feel like this one is something extra special, and I cannot wait to hear the whole thing. Oh, thank you so much, Kyle. I appreciate you saying that, and thank you for spreading the word about my music. Yeah, anytime, and let us know when you're in Louisville. We'd love to have you by. I will. Thanks. Take care. All right, you too. Bye. Okay, bye-bye.